Today I'm going to share with you about deuterium, which is the molecule that makes you tired and fat, and not many people know about it. This presentation will get technical at times, but I've done my best to prepare it in a way that's not as boring as it could be. So I want to cover several topics with you and explain to you exactly why it happens and how to avoid it. So the topics in this presentation are going to be the following. You will learn about how deuterium destroys metabolic function. We will discuss this first, then we'll go on to what deuterium is and where it's found, how to eat to reduce your deuterium amounts, and other deuterium depletion practices, and we'll discover some deuterium fun facts as well. So let's dive in. How deuterium destroys metabolism. Traditionally, people who think that fat people are not losing weight because they're lazy are just a bit not, let's put it, uneducated, right? Because loss of energy actually is what leads to increase in mass. Obese people are not lazy. They cannot tap into all this stored energy that they have. And there's a physics law that all systems in the universe follow, and that is E equals mc squared. We all learned it in school. And that means when we have a loss of energy, the mass will have to increase in order to make up for the loss of that energy. And so obesity is a sign of a loss of electrons, of this energy. And here are three examples I want to tell you about that famously Dr. Jack Kruse, who's a genius talking about all these things, he famously brings this up when he wants to explain this phenomenon. When a G-class star, like our sun, is about to lose energy, it increases in mass. When an ankle is inflamed, it increases in mass. And when a heart is failing, it increases in mass as well. So it is a universal physical phenomenon that also applies to our body. And so E equals mc squared. Loss of energy leads to an increase in mass. So when we gain weight, it means that we are losing energy. So if we want to reverse that process, we want to increase our energy and make our body be able to contain that energy. So what deuterium does is it makes your energy production go down. And let's talk about the ways that our body makes energy. It makes it in several ways, but one of them, the most kind of important one that we want to focus on here, is through creation of the ATP molecule that you can see here, and the byproduct of that operation is also metabolic water that holds charge. So these two kind of currencies of energy in our body are important. And in order to produce those ATP molecules and water, we need to provide hydrogens and electrons, feed them through little spinning nanomotors inside of our mitochondria, which are the powerhouses of the cell, that we have thousands of mitochondria in each of the cells of the body, excluding red blood cells. But everywhere else we have mitochondria in our cells. In every mitochondria we have these nanomotors that spin to create ATP and water, and this is how we create energy. This is not the only way, but this is like a major way that we want to talk about here. Deuterium, what it does, it breaks those nanomotors that spin to create energy, and when it breaks them, obviously less energy is produced. So let's recap how deuterium destroys metabolism. When you lose energy to the environment, your body increases its mass to make up for the loss. So E equals mc squared works for us as well. The energy that the body is capable to produce and contain is our life force, and that enables us to stay lean and healthy. So we want as much energy as we can, and we want to be able to contain it and not leak it to the environment. The body creates energy via spinning of nanomotors located in mitochondria. The energy is the ATP molecule and the metabolic water that serves as a battery. In order to be healthy, we need to provide the fuel that these nanomotors can use and stay away from things that break our nanomotors. So next point is what deuterium is and where it's found, now that I've piqued your interest. So we'll know that foods that we eat contain macros, carbs, fats, proteins, vitamins, calories, all these things that we hear about all day long. But what we don't hear about is that all these foods, both junk food and real food, contain varying amount of hydrogen. And different forms of hydrogen. There are two forms of hydrogen. One is deuterium and the other one is the light hydrogen. So hang on with me here. So hydrogen is the most prevalent element in our universe, and it consists of a protium form and a deuterium form. So there are two forms of hydrogen that biology uses on Earth. And that is the light hydrogen, which is just one proton and an electron spinning around it that you can see on the left, and on the right you can see deuterium, which also has a neutron that makes it double the size and double the mass as well. And that's why deuterium cannot fit where light hydrogen fits, in the nanomotors, without wreaking havoc. Okay, and this is how nanomotors are broken and how we can start producing less energy, leaking energy, and getting fat. And also it's important to notice that because deuterium is still hydrogen, right? It's not a different thing. It gets incorporated in all these different chemical and physical processes in our body where hydrogen goes, light hydrogen. And so it not only it breaks mitochondria, it also incorporates into hormones, enzymes, fats, all these important elements in our bodies. So that's why bringing down deuterium to healthy levels is one of the best practices we can do to get a healthier metabolism and a longer life as well. So we need to employ this kind of concept of deuterium depletion. You will hear me talking about deuterium depletion is lowering the amount of deuterium in our body through various practices that I will talk about shortly. Important to note that the water that mitochondria produce after this nanomotor spinning, producing ATP, is deuterium depleted. It's about 115 parts per million. So that's some information for you. We will compare some deuterium levels later on today. Here you can see light hydrogen. It goes in and the nanomotors spin and produce ATP and water in large quantities. And then on the lower half you can see a bigger hydrogen atom that is deuterium that cannot fit into nanomotors. It makes them stutter, and this way they get broken and they produce less energy for us in the form of ATP and water. So let's recap point 2. What deuterium is and where it's found. Deuterium is a hydrogen isotope that is double the size and double the mass of light hydrogen. Deuterium cannot fit into the nanomotors that spin to produce energy, and it breaks them, reducing the amount of ATP and metabolic water produced, which is energy. Deuterium can incorporate into hormones and other important elements of our body, ruining our health. And all foods and water contain deuterium, but the amounts vary. Let's talk about now how to eat to reduce deuterium. Deuterium is subject to the water cycle in nature. And that is because deuterium heavy water is called actually heavy water, is not H2O, it's D2O, deuterium 2O. And it has a higher melting point than H2O. It has a higher boiling point, that would be nice. And it takes longer to evaporate as well. And so that's why deuterium concentration in nature varies on Earth depending on the location where where you are, where your food is growing, for example, or where your water comes from. Deuterium is ruled by this water cycle in nature, and so in colder climates and farther from the ocean, deuterium levels will be lower. Closer to the equator and in warmer regions, there will be more deuterium. Okay, in growing foods and because of the rainwater that irrigates them, but also in the ocean as well. And so it's important to know, because we all drink water, we all consume foods, and when you start to be able to discern how much deuterium there will be in your water and food, that's the main way to practice deuterium depletion, through diet and water intake. Let's get into the foods. So, plants store deuterium in sugars and starches. Now it will start making sense to many of you why a well-formulated ketogenic diet will be the best approach to deplete deuterium, and why it is also the best way to lose weight. All these things are connected. So a ketogenic diet is low naturally in sugars and starches, and so it's low in deuterium. So things like fruit and things like grains, where flour comes from, starchy parts, are high in deuterium, and things like leaves, like spinach, or fats like olive oil, coconut oil. Coconut oil is superb. It's like the most deuterium depleted thing on earth. So these things are lower in deuterium because they are not sweet and they're not starchy either. When it comes to animals that we eat, caged animals that eat non-natural diets for them, like grains and corn and all this horrible food that they're fed in, like CAFOs, like the mass production facilities, are gonna have much higher deuterium levels in the meat that we eat than, for example, grass-fed cows or any grass-fed animals, or chickens that go around and are cage-free and can eat bugs and grass and all of that stuff instead of high starchy meals. If we add to that the massive scale that we see today for globalization and world trade, and when we can buy a tropical fruit in the dead of winter in New York, for example, it makes us go more sick and fat because sun helps deplete deuterium. Tropical fruit need to be eaten where they are grown in this season. Eating out of season makes deuterium accumulate in our body. Eating in season, eating the most natural foods, will deplete our body of deuterium. Important to note here also that processed foods are also high in deuterium because they are made by using cheap water, which is higher in deuterium, and high deuterium contents, ingredients. And pair that with the fear of the sun that our current society is experiencing. All of that combined leads us to this chronic disease epidemic that we have on our hands today. All living beings, including plants, deplete deuterium naturally. Babies, when they're born, they're around 100 parts per million. And we eliminate excess deuterium through our breath, sweat, urine, and bowel movements. But as we age, we lose that ability. Well, it slows down, we don't lose it. And we start accumulating deuterium, which becomes toxic for us. So it doesn't only lead to weight gain and energy loss. According to research, too much deuterium can encourage cancer cell growth as well. Your diet is going to be fundamental to deuterium depletion. And as I said, A smart ketogenic diet, carnivore approach, that would be good because it's low in deuterium naturally. There are other things that can deplete deuterium that we will talk a bit later about. And I wanted to give you an example of numbers because we as humans love numbers to compare things. So here you can have a look at what different foods have in terms of deuterium inside of them. So coconut water and coconut oil are both extremes here presented to you because I thought it was the most interesting example of how coconut water, high in sugar, is so high in deuterium. It's the same amount of deuterium that is in ocean water at equator. It's the biggest. And then coconut oil, which is not the sweeter stuff but the fatter stuff, is the lowest deuterium food you can find. It's like 105 parts per million. That is very low. So you will notice that egg whites are very high in deuterium. Egg yolks, on the other hand, are very low on deuterium. Wheat flour is high and sugar is high, obviously. Oats, all grains will be. But lard, for example, is a fat, so it has very low deuterium in it. And on the right side, here are some popular bottled water so that you can compare. Obviously, higher deuterium content water will be cheaper, lower deuterium content water will be more expensive. So let's recap this point. How to eat to reduce deuterium. Deuterium takes longer to evaporate, and because of the water cycle in nature, its concentration will be higher closer to the equator and in warmer regions versus high altitude or cold regions. Plants store deuterium in sugars and starches. Animals eating biologically appropriate diets have a much lower deuterium content than grain-fed animals. Well-formulated ketogenic diets and local seasonal eating is key to managing deuterium levels in our bodies. All living beings excrete deuterium through sweat, urine, bowel movements. This process slows down as we age. On to the next point, other deuterium depletion practices. Fasting. So deuterium depleted metabolic water production is increased when we fast, right? Because when we fast, we burn our own body's fat for fuel. Fat goes into those nanomotors as hydrogen, and it makes more metabolic water in our mitochondria. And the more metabolic water we have, the more energy we have, and the more deuterium depleted we are. Obviously, when you fast, you don't even consume any deuterium with your food, but you're still drinking. So that's to the next point, dry fasting. This is to be practiced with caution. Do not overdo this, but obviously when you don't drink and don't eat, there's no deuterium coming in and you're still burning your own body fat. And not only that, you recycle that metabolic water and make it even cleaner, so it becomes more deuterium depleted. So dry fasting is extremely effective for deuterium depleting. Sunlight is deuterium depleting because the infrared spectrum of the sun increases this metabolic water in us. Did you know that? This is very cool. And the sun, even if it's behind the clouds, is always has infrared spectrum present on Earth. So whatever the weather is, you have to get out and expose your body to the sun to get those benefits. Also, when you're in hot sun, like in the summer, or you live in a hotter climate, the sweating from the sun will also make you excrete that deuterium through sweat, through your endocrine glands. Infrared light and sauna, for the same reasons of infrared light having this effect, and sweating as well. Cold thermogenesis. This, you have to get cold adapted first in order for this to work, but it's one of the best practices you can do for longevity, weight loss, and energy boosts, right? So cold thermogenesis boosts metabolism, with a special effect on the quantum level called proton dissipation. Don't worry, I'm not gonna explain what it is. It enables us to deplete deuterium. So cold is good for deuterium depletion, okay? Exercise. When we sweat, we excrete deuterium. Also, our breath rate goes up when we sweat, and we excrete deuterium every time we breathe. So the more you breathe out, the more deuterium you excrete as well. Quality sleep will help us deplete deuterium, because you cannot deplete deuterium without a healthy metabolism, and you cannot have a healthy metabolism without quality sleep, because we actually burn fat as we sleep as well, so in our deep phases of sleep. And if you miss out on those deep phases, if your quality of sleep suffers, then your metabolism will also suffer. Breath work. So oxygenation favors deuterium depletion. That's all you have to know. More oxygen, less deuterium. For that same reason, hyperbaric oxygen chamber will work. Earthing, how does that work? When you connect with your bare feet or special shoes to the ground, or you touch a leaf or a plant, or even sit on concrete in the natural clothes, like you have to wear natural clothes for that, like cotton or wool. So that will allow you to discharge static charge from your body that we accumulate if we don't connect to earth. And that reduces inflammation. When we reduce inflammation, we can improve our energy production, and so we can deplete deuterium that way as well. And very important to watch the quality of your supplements, because most supplements are made with cheap ingredients and they are deuterium bombs. And here are some fun facts about deuterium. If you exercise in a fasted state, you can produce almost half a cup deuterium depleted water per hour in your body. That is very cool, because you're not only burning fat from exercise, you're also fasted. Like it's the best thing, right? Scientists believe that the Big Bang actually created most of deuterium that is available in the universe. Our bodies make 1.1 liters of metabolic water from every kilogram of fat, which we either consume with food or we have burned as our body fat, burned for fuel. The analysis of ancient glaciers shows that at one point deuterium levels on Earth were 30% lower than they are today. Deuterium has an essential role in the blood, as its quantum properties allow us to produce ultra-weak ultraviolet light inside our body. How cool is that? And this is a practical tip for you. You can test for deuterium content in your tissues through a saliva, breath, or urine test that you can get to a lab in your country that deals with mass isotope spectrometry.